If you're a high achiever, you probably know the feeling, right? You hit these huge goals, you're super driven, you're successful, but you're also just exhausted. It's like you're on a roller coaster of intense work followed by a total crash. You're constantly pushing yourself, only to wind up right back where you started, just a little more worn out. So, in this explainer, we're gonna dig into that cycle, and more importantly, figure out how to finally get off the ride. People call this the results roller coaster, that whole pattern of sprinting, crashing, and then desperately trying to rebuild your energy. And the key thing to get right here from the start is that this has nothing to do with your willpower or discipline. It's actually a biological, psychological, and even structural problem that's baked into the way you operate.
So, does this ride sound a little too familiar? That feeling of inconsistency, where your confidence just skyrockets and then plummets with your productivity? You know, a lot of high achievers also secretly struggle with feeling like a complete fraud, just constantly worried they're going to be found out, no matter how impressive their resume looks.
Well, there's actually a name for this feeling. It's called the imposter phenomenon. It's that nagging sense of self-doubt that just won't go away, even when you have cold, hard proof of how capable you are. And if you feel this, trust me, you are not alone. It is incredibly common, especially for high-achieving people.
This is where it gets really interesting, because it's not just a feeling, it's a whole cycle. So let's walk through it. First, a new project lands on your desk, and bam, anxiety and self-doubt kick in. So what do? You either over-prepare like crazy, or you procrastinate until the last minute. Then, of course, you get it done and you succeed. But, and this is the kicker, you tell yourself it was just luck, or that you only succeeded because you worked yourself to the bone. You don't credit your actual skill. So that feeling of being a fraud, it sticks around, and the whole exhausting cycle just starts all over again with the next task.
So, where on earth does this intense pressure even come from? To really get that, we have to go back to its origin story, which, believe it or not, usually starts way earlier than we think.
You know that relentless critical voice in your head? Well, psychologists say it's basically an echo. It's the voice of our parents, our teachers, or society that we absorbed when we were kids. And here's the thing. It actually developed to try and protect us, to make sure we fit in and avoided the pain of failure or rejection.
And this pressure gets reinforced from a very young age. Research shows that a staggering 70% of students, 70%, feel like their parents' love or value is tied directly to how well they do in school. That is a really heavy burden for anyone to carry. So when love and your own value feel like they depend on your success, you fall into what's called the achievement identity trap. Your whole sense of who you are gets tangled up with what you accomplish. Your self-worth isn't just a given. It's something you feel like you have to earn again and again and again. Now, obviously, living this way just isn't sustainable. Operating under this kind of constant, grinding pressure comes at a very high and very real cost. The numbers here are pretty stark. High-achieving students are diagnosed with anxiety and depression at rates 2 to 3 times higher than the national average. So the very drive that fuels all that success is also creating this huge mental health burden. And eventually, all of this leads to burnout. And let's be really clear here. Burnout is not just feeling a little tired. It is a profound state of exhaustion, physically, emotionally, and mentally. It's what happens after way too much stress and from using up all your energy masking, pretending you're totally fine when you're really struggling inside. And his symptoms can be really debilitating. You might notice yourself getting super sensitive to light or sound, or maybe just simple daily tasks feel completely overwhelming. You might start pulling away from your friends. You could even feel this deep confusion about who you even are without your latest accomplishment. This isn't just in your head, it's a full body state of depletion. But what if there was another way, a more sustainable, more grounded way to be successful without constantly living under the threat of burnout? Well, there is, and it's all about making the shift from being a high achiever to becoming a high performer. So let's compare the two. On one side, you've got the high achiever. They're fueled by pressure and fear. They basically run on adrenaline, which, as we know, always leads to that sprint and crash cycle. But on the other side, you have the high performer. They operate from a place of clarity and intention. They don't rely on some fleeting burst of motivation. They build sustainable systems, and that leads to consistent, steady success. And this isn't just a simple mindset shift. It's actually a biological one. High achievers are often stuck in a fight or flight state, running on stress hormones like cortisol that literally shut down the part of your brain that's in charge of smart planning.
But high performers, they learn how to regulate their nervous system. They stay calm and grounded, which keeps that strategic, creative part of their brain online so they can execute plans consistently. This quote just nails it perfectly. High achievers chase goals. High performers become the kind of person who achieves those goals naturally. See the difference? It's a huge identity shift from just doing things to being someone, from needing those external wins to having an internal system that just creates them. Okay, so how do we actually make this shift? Well, it all starts with changing the relationship you have with your own mind, especially with that really harsh inner critic. A really powerful way to think about this is a framework called internal family systems, or IFS for short. Basically, it suggests that our mind isn't just one single thing. It's made up of different parts, like an inner critic or a perfectionist. But, and this is the important part, it also says we have a core self, which is this calm, confident, compassionate center that can lead all those other parts instead of being bullied by them. Now, this might be the biggest reframe of all. Your inner critic is not your enemy. It's actually part of you that is trying really hard to protect you. It learned a long, long time ago that being harsh and critical was a way to keep you safe from bigger hurts, like failing or being rejected. Its methods are, yeah, a little flawed, but its intention is to protect you. Just understanding that is the first huge step to changing the dynamic. You can actually start to change this relationship with 3 really tangible steps. First, give your critic a name. Call it the judge or General Patton, whatever works. It just helps create a little distance. Second, get curious. Ask it, hey, what are you trying to protect me from right now? It might say something like, I'm just trying to keep you from looking stupid. And finally, when it uses extreme words like you always mess up, gently talk back with some real facts. Actually, that's not true. I don't always mess up. Remember that project last week? That went great. And this question from Dr. Kristen Neff, a self-compassion researcher, is a total game changer. When that critic is being really loud, just stop and ask yourself, if my best friend came to me with this exact same problem, what would I say to them? You'd be kind, you'd be supportive. The whole goal is to start pointing some of that same compassion back at yourself. So you see, the goal isn't to declare war on your inner critic and try to silence it forever. That never works. The real goal is to step into that core self, to become a calm, compassionate leader for all of your inner parts. When your critic feels heard and understood by that calm leader, it doesn't have to shout so loudly anymore. It can actually start to relax. All right, so let's tie this all together. The big takeaway here is that results roller coaster you've been stuck on, it's not a personal failing. It's a systemic issue. Real, sustainable high performance is built on your biology, not just mental toughness. You absolutely can shift from running on pressure to operating from a place of clarity. And that inner critic, it can go from being your adversary to being a misunderstood ally. And that leaves us with one final, pretty powerful question to think about. If you actually stepped off that roller coaster, if you weren't constantly being fueled by pressure and urgency and fear, who would you be? What could you create from that place of calm, grounded clarity?